So like with them right now I saw that Quinela right now telling how that Cardinal was like crumbling and alone 200 years back when Cardinal was like thrown before like Quinela, but when like that might have been 100 years back, that incident might have been when like Quinela might have been trying to like steal like the powers of that Cardinal because the continuous and back then like I'm like even though Cardinal back then might Cardinals like in game like in like the virtual world of underworld like Cardinals like careful like actually much like name might have been just a so like Cardinal as well might have been like the daughter of like some person in like the virtual world of like a human in like in a trust another human trust like in virtual world of underworld is the being of the future. For the role of like even though Cardinal is like a program that's like that was like created to like benefit and all that like and even still Cardinal might have not existed from like the beginning of the ever. So like I'm like definitely, my brother and so like Carmen's like in-game cap name might have been lesser name of the reversion. So like I'm saying, even though that name might have been lesser, like deep down Cardinal might have totally knew that like what Cardinal is, that Cardinal is like a system program and everything, and that like her true name is like Cardinal and all that, but name of the reversion. So definitely, yes, like I'm like he might have totally interacted with others back then by have in-game names, just sort of which about which like all that like which like Cardinal might have been like fully aware of stuff, but like I'm looking back then what Cardinal might have been totally aware of might have been about like surveillance of like Quinela, definitely remember the but again for like it might have been 2 or 3 years back might have been when like Quinela as like the administrator might have summoned this to that steal to still research like AI system powers and everything is definitely one of the members. So like I'm just wondering like since it over with that back then like Quinla had gotten top told to get shared with like and the sort of like I'm just wondering like back then might have been when like in the sort of might have like had access to like a lot of memories of Quinla and like might have instantly realized like how much of like a villain Quinla was. So like what you did that I'm just wondering. So like my experiences were like 2 years back when like doing that might have someone lesser like the reason for like lesser like probably trembling and with like fear and all that might have been due to like even though lesser deep down might have knew that lesser was like Cardinal and like the system program and everything like still it might have been like the in-game cap side like lesser side of like Cardinal that might have had like the total control over like that might have been influencing Cardinal so much to like the point of like which are at that point back then 200 years back like I've been seeing like Cardinal as just like great sister arguments right of someone of like such great position so like I was looking like without sort of realizing like the winnistic side of Cardinal might have been like a citizen. So like that might be the reason for like 200 years back like sort of while possibly having been summoned by might have been like crumbling the chair in like the cosmic of Quinela, the lunar system. So back then, like sort of without realizing, like the villain song of like Quinela might have been looking at like Quinela with that great respect and everything. So like I'm looking, maybe it might be due to that. Might have been like as like great person and everything. But I mean, it might be due to that like the sort of might have been trembling with fear like that. It's certainly magic the emotion right now. So like basically according to my emotion since that I'm worshiping like 200 years back when Zelda might have been when like Zelda might have made the mistake of like trying to steal Cardinal powers and might have gotten her soul share with like Cardinal. So like at that point itself like Cardinal might have instantly realized like the villain's stick got an access to like the villain's stick memories of like the things that Zelda had genetic things that Zelda might have done. So like I'm looking at that point itself like what Zelda might have done might have been like on realizing that the mistake that Quinla had made of getting her sword shared with like with her like the very next thing Quinla might have wanted to do might have been to like interrupt and the correct like the scenario that I'm looking because like I'm looking from Quinla's point of view Quinla might have totally realized that maybe like if like of felt that it leaves like but like then having the sword shared like if like Quinla takes the correct life then Quinla as well might die because of them both having their source share the stuff new remember but like I'm even right now to like the person as well as like in there right now about those fight off against like Cardinal in still would be only trying to like fight Cardinal in such a way to that not to or ensure to like not take Cardinal's life like to totally weaken Cardinal and to the point of weaken and injure Cardinals to like the point of like being able to like put Cardinal into like an imprison like kind of like a situation forever. It's definitely my position. And maybe I'm also trying maybe also like the reason for like where like a cardinal has like an in-game character name of like a lizard like and like maybe even aging might be a thing with like even cardinal as well like how aging was like a thing with like twin as well in like the past like maybe it might have been since that soul sharing incident that might have happened with like Quinela's mistake that I was doing like things and that I was like even once like Quinela had like achieved since like Quinela doesn't age then like Quinela has like created like the sacred spells to like not age anymore like and that might be the reason for like maybe that even Cardinal having been revealed in that existed that 200 years back and still even to that person like even Cardinal as well not aging at all might be used also due to like the source sharing with that game that may have happened especially might be pretty impression so like I'm looking like it might have been back then when Quinla might have made like a mistake and sort of have source shared with like Lizard that like Quinla you know to like capture Lizard might have straight away tried to like capture and get some listen research rather than it might have been right then that like the sort of might have ran and hit in like that central library in that central building. It's definitely my very impression. So like I'm looking even that like might have been maybe Lizard might have back then might have not realized that way. It might not be aware that like the library would be that place where like none of the, neither Quinlan nor Earth guards will be able to like enter. Yeah, like it might have been like totally sheer lack of like literal. Maybe might have been what might have happened, or like literal might have been running through like the set of the vessels, trying to get away from Quinlan and her army forces, and like might have totally ended up running into like and like then that kind of like it might have been then that like the sort of might have shockingly found out that easily that neither Finland nor Harmful are able to like end like the like so like that might have been what kind of happened. It's definitely it might was very embarrassing. So like I was very impressive that like since it might have been since then since like the sort of might have hidden herself in that like library in like the central gallery. It might be since then that like literal after like gaining like the memory of like Queen Last Bellerism through that soul sharing that might have happened that uh, Lizard might have decided to like basically the Lizard might have lost like overcame and lost the influence of like the in-game human care lesser side of that Cardinal and might have like embraced like the Cardinal side of like lesser like the system program Cardinal side of like Luther. Then since then like Luther might have seen herself as not Lutheran but like as like Cardinal like as like Luther since then might have like embraced herself as like Cardinal and as like the system program. Like Luther since then might have been seeing her only as like a system program that with that only ultimate single goal that no matter what extent she has to go through that she will definitely be achieved. That mindset, all that might have been formed since that day that like this might have stood in that library to that basically that ultimate goals to like definitely that realization of like that embracing of that like the sort of cardinal that system program created to that destroy and delete Greenland basically that goes to that so like I'm remembering that embracing of that goal and basically that even like Lizard even seeing herself as like cardinal alone might have all happened since that day. When like Lizard might have hidden from like Greenland's army in like that library that we went to the also, the film of the right now, like Cardinal right now, and really tells that when that not called Cardinal by the name Lizard would be also might be due to that Lizard would be like that uh, in-game player side Lizard of like Cardinal might be like a memory that like Cardinal might not want any access, might not want like remember at all, and might have like permanently moved on from. Uh, this definitely my concern. So like I was since then like Elizabeth might have been only seeing herself as Cardinal and like might not be even wanting to like go back to like the memories of the days when she might have been trembling she might have been that in-game character. She might have been trembling with fear as like sensor side of like Cardinal is definitely one of the numbers. So okay, so like definitely one of the ambition right now as for like Quinela right now using some sort of like an ultimate power to right now welcome Cardinal and basically that this between that longer than expected like I'm between that power will be most likely so it's like I'm doing right now Quinela will be creating like multiple sword bombs is definitely going to you know so like maybe 6 or 7 or 8 sword bombs and also right now Quinela creating and basically all that sword bombs like surrounding Eugeo, Alice, and Cardinal is like the scenario that I'm like looking at not very much. Okay, so like the minimum premise right now is for like Linda right now feeling as if like it was like a mistake to let Cardinal get 200 years back and spoke up to not be able to like take Cardinal like the minimum premise that like 200 years back like Linda said like how Linda had made the mistake of like trying to steal Cardinal's power and basically getting the source her soul shared with the Cardinal and for like it might have been like a similar naiveness of twins that you were years back that might have caused up to like try to take Cardinals like a settling on the friendship. So like even right now we like the person like even right now Twin Dam says this dialogue like I'm going natural to deep down Twin Dam was going by now and like person Twin Dam would be most likely when fully aware that like she won't be able to like take Cardinals like that but if she takes Cardinals like their souls are shared like then Twin Dam as well might not only ending up would be ending up dying. Right? It's weird of that would be along the lines person for the finance would be along the lines and down but the most likely really aware of it's definitely not the same pressure. So definitely it might be like I'm looking right now it would be like a totally fake acting by doing that maybe it's like yeah channel it's definitely maybe my personal impression. So yeah. Okay, so like the minimum requirement right now as for like currently according to like Quinela in for like mass producing like the source goal and like Quinela nearing at least half that computer that half would be like Quinela will be talking about half of the tendency of like the human population in like the human rate like what's the word of control is minimum frame which is like I'm like definitely the scenario that I'm and I'm definitely eventually Quinela to like actually do exactly that and half of like the entire like the human population the human are eventually will are turning them into like a bunch of sword worms like there is a scenario that I'm looking so finished sword worms like scenario that I'm looking so that between the creating an army of like sword worms that is scenario that I'm looking and that's for like Eugeo and Alice and Eugeo not being able to do anything or Cardinal not being able to do anything about it like my first impressions was that it was only due to like right now I'm going to bring the has like the fight between like Cardinal, Quinela, and Kitto, and Alice, and Hugo, and all of them. Their team versus Quinela, like as if like current fight will be going on, like as it is like Quinela once again bring back like the prototype of like, the sword bird itself. Like I'm saying like definitely I was right now, Kitto, Alice, and Hugo collectively will be fighting against like the sword bird, while Cardinal and the and would be fighting over against like Quinela. That's the scenario that I was looking, and I'm putting as this fight will be progressing on the like. Uh, like one of the criminals from like Dhaka eventually would be like or like I'm run by the attack of like the sword government or super like maybe like the walls of like that room of like the top of the building that are like getting destroyed and like that way like the room getting exposed to like the outside like the scenario that I'm thinking. So in such a situation like or like I'm looking it would be like the minion from like the Rasta tree like using the sort of like an attack and destroying that wall of that top floor of instance other sector of the talent. Anyway, like I'm like that wants to be destroyed and then this one like as like Kitto and Ego and Cardinal also would be totally focused on the fight like I'm looking that from like the blind side of Alice like you can like answer right now has that blind side but like the red eye and everything that so like from that blind side I'm looking for like one of like the minions from like the after team who's been showing up and like updating Alice like and like I'm looking fighters like that from like the doctor will be quickly attacking and affecting Alice like from like the blind side like with the senses will be from like the blind side like I'm from that attack sort of thing and like Alice most likely losing her soul. It's like the scenario that I'm so like Alice like uh, uh, has the sword like as losing it and like the sword falling to like the floor and while Alice will be like quickly uh taken away and affected away by like flying in from like the after and like that means flying away with like and it's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking right then I'm looking that Percoli most likely will be showing up to the top floor. Like because like definitely before like taking so we can see like I'm looking like it might have probably given might have probably threatened from like the bottom floor to like the floor to like and then Eugeo and Alice I think like had gone towards land while Hurricane had I think like has gone towards like Eugeo and Alice like so frozen kill it off and Alice I think like basically back then like I'm before like Eugeo and Alice had made a few like the top off to like in the room like they might have only forcefully threatened they might have only threatened to take Hurricane's life and like they might have only that way that forced Hurricane to like undo like the free state of network body definitely on the so like I'm looking at back then even though Hurricane has such exceptional power like I'm looking at back then like I'm looking that maybe that it might have been a situation where like Hurricane might have been off confident and that might have had to like jump down so like I'm looking at that point might have taken advantage of that since like I think like it is one has back that might was in like a frozen like state like I'm then like Kipton might have already taken advantage of that guard down state of that Hurricane like they would to put the sword on Fulkin and these threatened to Fulkin might have been what might have happened. So like I'm looking that way, like Crypto might have threatened to Fulkin and might have made possibly made to Fulkin like under the decrease state of like the body. So like I'm looking like that way, like I'm looking like after like right up like Alice will be taken away by abducted away by the flying minions and Kirito and Alice and Eugeo and all of them and even Cardinal at that when you're only getting distracted and would be left only shocked and like seeing Alice like totally unexpectedly getting abducted away by this flying minion. So like at that point I'm looking definitely for like the scenario to be most likely Quinela, most likely that attacking that taking advantage of that distracted state of that opponents and if we at that point maybe that only comes like an again powerful attack at like Kirito Kirito and the others of like the scenario that I was surprised. So like at that point I'm looking like most likely the scenario that I'm looking for like Cardinal at that point like jumping in to like save and protect them and I'm looking at Cardinal that way getting badly injured by that powerful attack of Quinela. And I'm looking like as like Cardinal will be protecting that way would be like through a sacrificial manner would be like protecting his and also like and that when I'm looking at Cardinal with like the remaining bit of like tough energy and power like I'm looking at Cardinal using some sort of like an attack and sending that Kirito, Eugeo and body flying out of like the top floor of Templeton of the building. And I'm looking like it would be important for it to be like a strategical move by Cardinals to like basically to save Kirito, uh, and Kirito and Ildo and body. Specifically, I'm trying because of like body process like I'm putting Cardinal who did only expecting like even though they would be falling off from like the top things and the room, but only using Dragon would be able to like save Crypto and Hugo and himself. That is what the Cardinal is all expecting. So like I'm like since like I'm considering that Cardinal by then would be only up like come to like the mindset that it will be definitely Quinla, the Soul Golem and Quinla still will be just like currently too strong for like Cardinal and all of them. So you know and my Victoria pressures were like the reason for Cardinal doing that would be because of like at that point like Cardinal would have taken like so much of injury by trying to like protect it and others from like the end of the crop like so like I was like Cardinal at that point while using some sort of like an attack and like sending it to Ludo and body out of like falling out of like the center of the building at that point like Cardinal will be telling them to like basically to go and save Alice and basically to eventually to return back and that they will be able to like stop to land not to after like saving Alice for them to train and get stronger and return back and bring down Quinla would be along the lines of like Quinla Cardinal will be telling to the kid to and brothers and I'm the Cardinal also telling them to like not worry about like Cardinal that like she will be fine. So like I'm telling this scriptures like Cardinal saying this and Cardinal actually looking from sort of like an attack and that will like Kid and but only only point from like the top of the top of the building it's like the scenario that I'm saying but God is straight away calling out this like dragon and like them all going up going to like the last to save Alice's breakfast scenario that I'm looking. And in the dark way, I'm looking like the flying minion would be bring Alice to like Alice's actual true parents, like my best friend. And then simply my best friend that like Alice's father in like the town of Rowley won't be like Alice's actual father. Like that person might have that man might have like that person who believes his father, like they believe that person in like the town Rowley like Shelter's father, like we would have totally found Alice most likely in like wandering through like the borders of like the environment, especially while we might have gone to like the border area of like to the end mountains for like some specific reason, maybe to like gather some items, rare items or something that he might have found Alice when Alice was like a child, and he might have took care of Alice might have been what might have happened. So like I'm still remember for instance that like neither Alice nor Selka would be even aware that that like uh, Alice is not Selka's actual sister and that ancestors won't be aware that basically even to the person that like basically that person in like the town of Rome is not as actual father. Certainly when the like a person like ancestors like parents like actual parents might be in like the Rasta place, the Biliman ranges. So land like it might have been in some sort of like an extreme situation, maybe like while some sort of like fight or like so like that there might have been like some sort of like fighting or like war like kind of like a situation that then might have been going on like the on the after three and like at that point like maybe I'm into the person not only as a father but like also as actual mother as well might be alive in like the after things like one person development definitely at that might raise his hand arms towards like the child Alice his cause Alice to like actively cross into like the dark degrees. That Dark Knight would definitely be Alice's father, acting father. But like I'm maybe Alice's mother as well would be alive. So like after maybe in like the past like in that whole war kind of a situation like the after like Alice's mother might have tried to like ensure the safety of Alice by like having someone like look after Alice like at like some freedom location and maybe like the during the war like like the enemies might have taken the life of that person that might have been trying to take care of Alice and like that way like Alice might have wandered into and ending up crossing like the dark way into like the country through that mountain area. Might have been what might have happened, which might have been when like that Alice like current father in like the town of Parole that might have found like the child Alice might have been one of the days to like what might happen or like I'm looking like it might have been Alice's mother might have been like the person that might have been trying to like ensure like the safety of Alice during that whole fighting and war kind of like a situation and maybe it might be then that like the enemies might have taken the life of Alice's actual mother. This might have been resulted in that Alice only wandering around and ending up crossing like the dark way and entering into like the hidden way and ending up in like the north. Might have been like the other possibility that happened. Right? So like because of all this reason, I'm definitely think like the flying when from like the dark way like after like abducting Alice like it sort of bringing Alice to like the dark way to like Alice was actual parents like the scenario that I'm doing and I was like Alice will be trying to like get away and I'm like Alice so Paris trying to like convince Alice that like they are Alice through Paris, but like I'm thinking Alice won't be buying it that at all, and Alice will be trying to get away, and I will bring them at that point Alice was like forcefully putting Alice into like an impossible kind of like a situation like the last way, and I'm looking like it's the team of like it's so easy and but body eventually going up to like the last way and like fighting all sorts of like fox and goblins and minions and all that, and I'm looking like eventually making it to like the location where like and that's the key. And I'm looking like as its parents would be accepted from a film like like a particular item so like I'm looking like or like I'm looking like eventually ending up with like Kirito having to fight off against like the king of like the dark fate, the ruler of Exarch, which will be also like a human, the human for like Kirito to like save and it's also like a thing for like a new scenario that I'm looking so like Kirito totally need to be fighting and winning that fight and I'm like after like hearing that fight, like I'm looking like Kipto probably like that role of that we may be like keeping his word and I'm looking like to show that we are of Quinela and so like now the ambition maybe for like the that's a being rolled over by Queen, especially in French, and that Queen probably maybe being like as actual true mother, especially in French, like I'm looking like and that Queen of like that Queen role of like the Dark of Queen might have been actually being being last like childhood rivals maybe back when like Quinla way before like Quinla became like the administrator back when like Quinla was only a child like Amazon back then like Amazon like them both might have been rivals and Amazon like that rival uh, girl might have left to like the initially might have had the group might have initially left to like the dark way to last even back then like there might have been orcs and goblins in like the dark way like that girl might have left she might have been exceptionally talented so like she might have left to like the dark way to rule out like the dark way definitely like I'm looking like happily after that like I'm looking like eventually after the like and once like that queen ruler of like the dark queen might have lost hands like everything like her like all the attack from like dogs and goblins and everything might in like the infantry and everything might have been actually a lot of them might have been like actually doing that Quinela when you're abducting all these like people for like the prime senator and everything position and to like basically do all the index monitoring and everything like also of such abduction that Quinela might have done in like secret might have Quinela might have put all the blame in front of like humans like Quinela might have framed it into as like it being like the work of like off and goblins affecting the minimum and everything maybe bunch of like the abductions by off and goblins might have been also like maybe like a queen of like the dark race like sub private search for like first orders that name and things. So that's not a proper analysis also like a possibility that I'm considering. So certainly I was like Quinla won't be aware that about like the about like the roller of like the dark race, like the queen of like, the dark race no her daughter having gone missing and all that, and that daughter was like Alice and all that. Like Twinla might not be aware of the minimum. Yet, like I'm hearing Twinla really might have strike a deal with like that queen arrival of like the Dark Way. And it will be like part of like the deal that the Twinla might have disabled like that barrier in like the surrounding areas of like the center of the wedding, which allowed like the minions from like the Dark Way to be able to like fly to like the towards like the top of extremely higher top portion of like the areas of like the upper scene where usually it's not possible. It's definitely with Cambridge. So definitely like and another point like that flying minion from like the dark being present there might be part of the secret deal between Quinla and like that rival from like the dark to like basically to hand over Alice. Definitely one of the Cambridge. So like another thing like that might be the case. So like another Quinla might be not all aware that Alice is selected or of like that twin role with so like definitely like that twin roller might have like such some sort of light to like twin lad to for like the reason as for like her bonding and it's also like about that and I'm remembering they just struck a deal and like that twin ruler of like the data we might have uh bribe Quinla somehow gave some sort of like an offer to Quinla which like Quinla might have been not been able to like refuse and that way like this deal might be like right now about to happen secondly my frame version. So like I'm looking like that way. So like my frame is that maybe like the actuality of the situation might be like the dark prey not wanting to like take over like the human prey might not be like the queen that the role of the dark prey as his mother might not be even like desiring to like take over like the human prey or anything. It's also like a possibility that I'm like as his mother like only concern might be ants and that would be like so reason for like all attacks in like the human prey by like the offline government that all been going on for like like definitely my information might have all began after like Alice went and might have gone missing from like the data feed. It's also like a possibility that I'm doing. So like I'm doing like definitely eventually I'm also bring like Kirsho and Eugeo and Buckbody like entering into like the data feed to save Alice and make eventually that progression through the data feed and eventually reaching that clean up like the data feed would be like an extremely superiorly stronger than Alice's father. Like actually not going to be extremely strong with me superior strongest but like I'm doing like Kirito was like Alice's mother fight. Just like the ruler of like the dark sorry, Alice's mother was like Kirito battle fight or like I'm going to be like make either that or let's say I'm going to like to be like a rescue Alice like it will be a fight between like Hugo versus like Alice's mother. So it's like the other person that I'm doing. So like I'm doing regardless of like which the body like I'm doing like that fight usually ending up in like the favor of Kirito and Hugo like the scenario that I'm looking for, like them winning that fight and like they will be fighting that fight because like I'm looking like the role of like between us and the other people they might have been having like that so confidence that she so it's a strong so like I'm looking like she might have never expected like neither Kito or either to be able to like be strong enough to be able to like pick up the minimum of the rabbit. So like I'm thinking like they might have made the deal that basically the winner of this if that Kito or like Ito wins this that fight against like the team that they would that then the team has to like surround Alice to be around the lines like of the daily limits that fight will take place and like some of them like regardless of other character or like angel that will be fighting up against the clean like I'm looking that them winning. So like I'm looking that way like Alice being rescued and I'm looking like in characters through the interaction that will be taking place like I'm looking like character and you just openly finding out that the dark way had this entire time had absolutely no intention at all to like take or like the interface like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm having like and even while Kitchen do and Purple with preventing through the dark rotate to save Alice and all that, like they will be always having that fear that basically of like the eventual possibility of like Quinela or returning like the end the half of like the entirety of like the human population in like the human population to like soldier so like and the different like Kito and Eugeo and Purple like for like the half back then would be to like basically save Alice and basically to like form a proper strategy and to run back to like the center of their route and bring down Quinela before like in that turn like the half of like the inducted leading into like into like so forth might be like this the intent that which like get to individual and portfolio and bring it to like the dark way to save and it's like the scenario that but like by the time like they will be tutorial will be like sitting like between a finger or three like Amazon by then a lot of time things won't be going according to like their expectations and Amazon like a lot of time being getting spent in like the data page. So like Amazon by the time like as a tutorial will be fitting like between the data page and giving us like by then like Amazon like Quinela would have turned like the half of it then the of the Indian population into like soul columns. It's definitely an operation. But maybe like at that point, like Quinela might be like about deciding to like basically all that soul columns, not to just to like basically take over like the doctor care as well. And I'm looking like since like the administrator will have absolutely no access to like the powers, won't be able to like use her powers in like the doctor and also for like maybe Quinela planning on like basically creating all this like great army of like soul golems and basically sending them off to like the dark country to like wipe out like and eliminate like not only the ruler of like, the dark country but like all of like the dogs and governments and also and for like doing that to like then possibly maybe try to like this even roll over try to like maybe like put an effort into like and write maybe even more sacred aspect and try to like exert like portfolio trying to like attempting to like want to that would be wanting to like maybe that bit want to like take over like the darker play as well and roll over like attempt to like roll over like the darker play as well is also like about that ability. So like I'm thinking there might be such an intent as well behind bigger intent as well maybe behind like doing that planning on creating like then there are many of those forums and everything. So like about that I'm looking so like I'm looking like by the time that I get to use when but would be like saving and it's like I'm looking like by then like I'm looking like just like attack on like the dark way by like sword balls and the navy would be already having definitely no same with so like I'm looking like then that turning into like an absolute war again like south and goblin army and like the humans from like the dark nation later on from like the dark free versus like the sword golems from like the human race and I'm like in that war like I'm like Kirito and I'm in that war like regardless of how much like effort into that no matter like everything like that like the orcs and goblins and like the minions and like the dark knights and everyone from like the dark City would be like suspicious like they would be like, no matter how much effort they will be putting into that fight like I'm like none of like the stone golems and the won't be like taking any damage at all or getting destroyed and defeated. It's like the scenario that I'm looking like I'm looking like as they were struggling, I'm looking like Gito would be like making his way through like the zone bottom, taunting like the zone bottom attack and making it towards like Quinla and I'm looking like the main boss battle between like Quinla and Gito would be happening while the and I'm looking like even among the zone bottom army that Quinla is usually creating like I'm looking like they are being like two top soul bottoms like that only little stronger than even all the finished final sword bottoms are great army like we two with sword bottoms that will be like the leader two leader sword bottoms will be present like scenario that I'm looking and I'm looking like you and Alice will be fighting off against those two leader sword bottoms while Kito will be fighting off against like doing that opportunity that I'm looking and to understand like I'm looking like the situation with like Cardinal will be still in that and I'm definitely bring Cardinal to not fight but like Cardinal will be that put into like an interesting like kind of like a situation from right now to like that different going like the future like and you know, like Cardinal will be remaining in like an different kind of like a situation like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing that way like but when it will be through it is to eventually defeating or for defeating to end that if it will be only struggling to into like a video or for defeating to end but like but when it will be at that point that I'm looking like the half of like the human population like the human way that like Sunda would have turned into sword bonds will be like Quinela's liquid like something like all of them coming undone and basically like turning back from sword bonds to like humans to their actual human self. It's like any which scenario that maybe that would be how like it will be saving all those humans who be forcefully turned into like sword bonds by Quinela's like any scenario that I'm going to bring. And so like this is like the other possibility that I'm considering where like maybe it would be after this war entire war that I'm considering. So India would be difficult by getting so that I'm considering maybe like it would be at that point that like Kayaba when like Kipto and all of them would be thinking that it's so finally over that like India has finally been defeated and brought down it. Like, maybe it would be at that point that Kipto and all of them will be getting that unexpected ultimate surprise of like just like I was like Kayaba at that point that basically entering into like the limited of like the virtual world of Underworld as through the super account of like for stage with that exceptional powers that would be like proper person that of that not only Quinela but also like of like the entire like Quinela's one of harm like in the scenario that ambassador and maybe and at that point, I'm also going like then after the human population, like the human population, like straight away, like listening to like everything that was teacher would be saying, like without them realizing that and having no idea that it's like actually kind of using this like super account of that conversation. Like in the scenario that I'm also looking and I'm listening it. And that way like Kaiba maybe even after all that like I'm looking like Kaiba turning like the entire human population against like crypto and all. It's like an also like an individual scenario that I'm also looking. Okay, so like the new generation right now, like I was asking to labs like where exactly like the owners of like the 30 source that like make up like the current source zone like that they are fighting up against. Like I'm going to definitely I'm going to mention that like those 30 owners, those 30 humans of those source of like source zone that would be like the senator like locked up in that room, like doing the whole monitoring of like the diabetes and everything to be like them might be actually exceptionally strong sword fighters and then like it would be their swords that would be like so like I'm going to that might have wellness typically simultaneously while like attaching these powerful swordsmen from like the human way might have also that use their sword to like basically that turn them into that a sword golem and then with like while at the same time, the Quinlan might have also made them turn them into like senators that constantly like store the monitoring of like the labyrinth itself. But might be what might have Quinlan might have witnessed declared on his definitely not the frame. So like now the frame positions are like currently like the among like the senators that the whole labyrinth monitoring that it might have been recently like exactly 30 senators might be like doing that the labyrinth monitoring, especially when brain and then because of like it might be their soul that they relate to and might have extracted out and might have materialized like the souls into taking it taking it into like the form of soul, especially when and that way like Quinella might have uh, like fixed up all those souls and turned it into like the soul almost definitely when so like I'm looking like those 30 senators who's like doing like the cabinet monitoring that would be all soulless humans, but like all of their soul having gotten extracted by Quinella into making this like soul golem into materializing it into the source and basically adding up to 30 source into making the source golem might have been what might have happened with that. There's like a possibility that I'm discovering and not so like my documentary mentions that like even while Barcode is like synthesis one like I'm there might have been like past great number of like intergenic like using like the very same synthesis like power of like Quinella might have had like intergenic army a totally different set of like huge set of like 30 set of like intergenic army in like the past before like before Quinella and Barcode into like an intergenic such new famous. So like I'm even like after turning all of them into that for like suppose procedure of like the soul column, which might have only been completed in like the present, but like as like Villa might have extracted their soul and might have been like working towards like the creation process of like creation of like the soul column. At that point, like I'm Villa might have decided to like create like a new set of like internet and army. And it might be at that point that Amazon like Villa might have like as part of like the process of creating like a new set of like internet army, like the first person that at that point might have ended up being Barcode, and that might have been like the reason for like Barcode's name being like that of like synthesis one. Definitely not the brain for what might have happened of the new thing. Okay, so like the new brain right now, that's what like Cardinal right now using that ultimate reveal that it's like the beloved people in like the memory team to protect the entire night that like that had turned into forcefully turned into her army like basically there's like the swords in that the sword form like I'm definitely yeah like the fact that like Alice had as Alice that fact that like Quinela had turned Alice as well forcefully into like an entire and that definitely while stealing Alice's like memories which there definitely might have existed before like advertisements like memory is stolen by Quinela definitely there might have existed like the memories of like of childhood friends Kito as well as Eugeo in like Alice's like list of beloved people in like Alice's memory is yet like the fact that like both Kito as well as Eugeo haven't been turned into being part of like the soul golem. I'm also like that might be due to like maybe I'm also like I think like maybe like Alice's like census might be like census is 31. So like that's like a possibility that I'm so like I'm looking like for like the first prototype sword golem maybe like Quinla might have only used like since right now revealed that basically Quinla has like used like 30 swords for like use 30 swords to create like the prototype sword golem. So like I'm thinking maybe it might be due to like and I think that maybe it might be like not census is 30 but like uh maybe Alice might be like after like the initial 30 in the page might have been like when Swinda might have affected Alice Wimbledon. Allison might have turned Alice into like an Italian. So like maybe like I think like maybe Alice might be like 31. Symptom is 31. So like as like an Italian Alice might be into 31 and that maybe that being the sole reason for like Kito and Yujo in like the person not being part of like turned into a sword and being part of like the integrity being part of like the sword border. This like one possibility that I'm possible. For like the other possibility that I'm possible, maybe even if like it's like the other possibility are like I think like maybe like even if like Alice it's like the other possibility maybe where like Alice might be like in this 30 yet like I'm possible like Twinla might have even if that is the case then I'm possible like if that's the case then I'm possible still Twinla might have totally purposefully left out uh, Kirito and Eugeo and might have not turned Kirito and Eugeo into a sword, maybe due to like Quinela, exactly like how Cardinal have this like tiny Charlotte like fighter like bug that Charlotte had placed on sent and to like basically like observe everything like the journey of Kirito and for that like I'm something like maybe Quinla as well might have been able to that sense like maybe even from like the point where like Joe had like basically cut down like the gigant solar itself like at that point itself like like Yujo and Kitto might have gained like that attention of like Quinla and might have Quinla might have sent her own version of like a Charlotte like bug might have been observing like the entire journey of like Kitto and Yujo to like save and so like I'm sure like Quinla might have wanted to like maybe just for entertainment like Quinla might have wanted to like how that ultimate fight against like Kircho and Yugo. And Quinla might have had that extreme or confidence that like even back then like Quinla might have been in like the process of creating like the soul mode. So like Quinla might have been absolutely having that absolute or confidence that basically Kircho and Yugo won't be ever able to like bring Quinla down. So like I'm like to have that like bit of like an entertainment of like a fight maybe from Quinla's point of view might be like the reason for like Quinla maybe might have purposefully left out like the memories of the beloved memories among like the beloved memories of like Alice when Alice was subjected to be turned into like an internet in back then might have purposefully left out like the beloved memories of like Kirito and Yuzo so that like Kirito that way Kirito and Yuzo won't be turned into swords of like sword golem and that way like Kirito and Yuzo will be able to like make their journey all the way to like Swatantra Kadar to save Alicent so that at that point like Quinla could like realistically destroy all the hope and everything through like the soul golem might be like the case with like the other possibilities that I'm looking over and my possibility I'm looking right now. So like I'm also definitely more precious that like while Quinla had stolen Alice's like memory piece while turning Alice into like an internet like I'm also like at that point like among like, the beloved memories of Alice like I'm looking it might be Kirito and Yugo alone that might have been paired by Quinla like one possibility that I'm looking. Either that or like Alice might be like simple to 31 and not within the initial 30 like Quinla might have used to like create like the prototype or the like the other things that I'm doing. So like if like the if like the actuality might be is that basically Quinla had like purposely left out Kirito and Yujo's like uh, alone from like Alice without memories. Then I'm going to bring like still like among like Alice's like without memories, definitely Alice's father in like the round of rolled as well as like Selka as well might have turned into Quinla might have turned them into swords. So like I'm looking like in like the current sword golem prototype sword golem that's like Alice and all of them are facing off against like I'm looking that there might have been like maybe Selka as well as like Alice's father from like down of road and like really them both might have been also turned into swords. People like turned into like the swords of like the current sword goal, prototype sword golem with like capability വരാൻ പറ്റി പറയാൻ പറയാം. The removal of that PHA module within like the sword golem, but definitely won't be possible. So like the only way to like bring down like sword golem would be to like bring down Quinela. It's definitely not afraid. So like I'm looking like once like initially like the feature once like Quinela will be awkward and defeated by most likely Eugeo like I'm like or like the combined effort of like Eugeo Eugeo as well as Alice. Like I'm looking it will be one of these two scenarios that will be like definitely negotiating with or be bringing Quinela down. So like I'm going to once like Quinela would be defeated and like Quinela would be that point would be getting weakened like I'm like at that point, like like the PHP module contained within all this that source code that Quinla might have created and on by herself and inserted onto like the onto like all this like code would be like automatically like coming out on its own once like Quinla uh, gets weakened settling on there. So like I'm looking like the only way to like stop like the code column physical operation would be to like only or and defeat and weaken Quinla and her powers. It's like my good preemption. Okay, so like the minimum 300% right now are perfect. This ultimate secret of spell that Cardinal right now claims to have that she had learned for like 200 years to like bring down to India. But when that would be actually a lie and block the stuff by Cardinal is the minimum threat. So only distracting and that's the minimum threat. When but again the actuality of the situation might have been like 200 years back when like the source between that Cardinal and Twinda might have gotten shared due to like doing that trying to take Cardinals power like Ambassador like definitely back then like even though Cardinal might have totally escaped might have been totally fearful of Quinlan might have totally ran and escape and hide herself, might have hidden herself in like that library. Ambassador what might have actually happened might have been like since then like Ambassador 200 years like Cardinal might have totally put in that absolute effort so going through all the books like going through each and every single books in that huge library trying to like trying to learn or like create some sort of like an ultimate set of dark spell that can like specifically targeting to him that to like bring down to him. But like I'm wondering, even after taking 200 years, like I'm wondering, Garden might have not considered that as definitely not damage. So like I'm wondering, like finally, even though that might have been Cardinal's like initial strategy, like I'm wondering, like even after 200 years, like I'm wondering, like Cardinal, but and I'm wondering maybe it might have been by like the span of like 200 years that as like 200 years might have been almost over. Like it might have been then that like Cardinal might have completed reading each and every single line of like each and every single book. A great number of books in like that library stuff new operation. At that point, like I was maybe Cardinal might have probably realized that basically there is no sacred art spell that would be able to like that Cardinal would be able to like create with her knowledge and her which could like bring down Quinla might have been what Cardinal might have realized. So like at that point I was different like Cardinal might have might have decided to might have came up with like a plan B and that might have been to like basically to have to totally trick Quinla into like taking Cardinal's life because like I'm looking from Cardinal's point of view right now. From that point on, Cardinal might have been thinking along the lines that basically since like Quinla and Cardinal's souls are shared between each other, like I'm looking like so like since most likely definitely I think like Greenland Cardinal would be having like a single soul. So like I'm looking like Cardinal right now would be totally for a while after like her strategy to like create that ultimate spell, take that spell to like bring down Greenland. That attempt might have failed. Like the solution that Cardinal might have came up with to break down Greenland might have been to like trick Greenland to like taking Cardinal's life. So that like since like they both share like the same soul, like I'm between like one cardinal type to him that might also die. It's the member term. So like this might be the precise reason for like cardinal right now offering her life to like Queen. That will be like an ultimate stealthy strategical attempt by cardinal to bring down Quinela, definitely my personal ambition. But like I'm preferring like right now for Quinela to like most likely not fall for that, and I'm preferring by now like Quinela might not only figure that basically that is the that if Quinela, since they share the same soul, like if Quinela takes Cardinal's life, then like Quinela's well would be ending up dying. Like Quinela might have like maybe might have figured that out by now. And so like I'm looking like Quinela right now not falling for that trap of that Cardinal. It's like giving the scenario that possible scenario that I'm bringing out the so like the reimbursement right now as for like Cardinals right now making Quinela make the promise on her own flesh right to that not harm like Eugeo and Alice like different that those different will be also part of that Cardinals trick and bringing in strategy of like an attempt on like Quinela new and like like Quinela would be definitely even while making that promise Quinela would be having like absolutely no intention at all of like keeping that promise and like definitely with like Cardinal herself like basically already like saying how she even doesn't even see Quinla as like a human like I'm like definitely Cardinal as well might be well and fully aware that like Quinla is definitely not going to keep that wrong. Certainly also my temperature. So like I'm Cardinal will be right now attempting for that trap to bring down Quinla by making Quinla take Cardinal's life. It's like the scenario that I'm referring. So like I'm maybe a remote possibility that I'm referring right now with like Quinla making all the like wrongs and everything like I'm losing maybe for like the possibility of like Quinla making like the next biggest mistake and basically Quinla taking charge in his life and maybe like through such a manner maybe like Quinla well ending up dying. It's also like a remote kind of like a possibility that I'm considering and I'm sorry. So let's assume out the reimbursement right now with like Quinla villainistically and mercilessly like attacking Cardinal like I'm considering like definitely right now like the scenario that I'm looking for like Cardinal only usually like suffering her way into like eventually ending up dying by Quinla and at that point itself I'm looking like Quinla and like also Cardinal that way like the moment Cardinal would be dying like I'm considering Cardinal would be smiling and I would like Quinla would be totally confused and at that point like the moment Cardinal would be dying like Quinla as well ending up dying due to like the shared soul and basically like the moment Quinla would be dying like a person like uh the moment Quinla and Cardinal would be dying like a person like the soul god as well like basically like we are turning back to like the humans that have been converted by Quinla into like the souls that make up like the soul god and prototype like and them all returning back to like the human the actual human form like the scenario that I was going to like Quinla that's like that happening is like the scenario that I was so like at that point, I was like definitely Kirto would be that, and also would be totally sad for like specifically Kirto who had like interacted with like Cardinal way more than the like Kirto totally feeling extremely sad about like Cardinal's loss, and I'm wondering like while Kirto and all of them would be feeling as if like at least like Quinla has like the whole trouble with like Quinla is over. Like I'm wondering maybe at that point is when I'm wondering that the minion from like the darker place, like quickly showing up from like the blind side of Alice and quickly affecting Alice and basically flying away with like Alice to like the darker place. Just happening at that point is like so the also like a kind of like a maybe remote positive that happened. So like at that point, I'm also for like Eugeo totally like running after running after like the minion and that will be everything else and like Eugeo totally ending up like and I was expecting that minion at that point like entering into like that also by destroying like the walls and I'm like like walls of that floor so like I'm doing like Eugeo totally trying to reach out to towards Alice trying to catch Alice but like I'm the minion will be flying away and Eugeo falling and like Eugeo would be like trying to like save Eugeo, but like I'm looking like Eugeo as well, jumping out of like the rock hills and everything and trying to like save Eugeo, but like I'm looking like at that point like neither Eugeo nor Eugeo not being able to like Eugeo not being able to like hang on to like anything else as like Eugeo and Eugeo they about to like fall to the that's like I'm looking right before that like I'm looking like but sorry like most likely saving the with like the with like dragon or like with like ultimate second ultimate like they kind of actual true power not probably like maybe stopping time or something or slowing down time and this is saving kids or any of the with dragon something and like them heading over to like the darker way to like basically save and it's like the other kind of like a more possibility that I'm of like an scenario that I'm looking right now with the okay so like let me know the right now with like Quinela right now repeatedly attacking Cardinal and basically like Eugeo right now looking to like the ceiling and thinking that the first topic is going like I'm looking that like even though currently Eugeo is not an Egyptian, like things like back when Eugeo was like an Egyptian, but was controlled by Quinlan and was like an Egyptian. Eugeo had the power to like move objects and basically pull out. Eugeo had during one of the fights as like an Egyptian, Eugeo had basically pulled out the sword that was much to like the ceiling like I'm looking that Eugeo right now. Solely that absolute desire like causing Eugeo even while not being an Egyptian to be able to like still access that power to like move objects. So like I'm looking like Eugeo right now unlocking and being able to like finally access that and getting that power and I'm like using that power like I'm doing Eugeo right now basically all those stolen memory pieces that like all of all the industry 13 that like it is trying to like that ceiling of like the top floor like I'm looking like in the Eugeo right now taking in all that spotlight and literally Eugeo like totally using power to like move objects to like move all that crystals like all that memory pieces and I'm looking like Eugeo moving bring all those memory pieces down and basically like using his like that power he will be gaining at that attaining at that point to like move all his memory pieces like I'm looking like Eugeo thrusting all that memory pieces onto like the soul golem at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking that way like the soul golem like absorbing it all those memory pieces and I'm looking like at that point like I'm looking like the while absorbing all those memory pieces and different like the PAT module, which like Quinela might have inserted into like the sword column. That PAT module that totally getting ejected is like the scenario from like the sword column and like I'm looking like as the sword column would be like as each soul, each human that have been turned into like the sword will be all getting back their memory uh, pieces through those memory pieces, like they will be all connecting to like their memory pieces, like they will be getting at that point what they will be starving for at that point, and like that realization would be resulting in like the undoing of like the transformation of like all those like humans who have been transformed by Quinlan into like a soul back to like humans, like the scenario that I'm presenting. So like and even removal of like that way like rejection of like the creative module of like the that way has been into like so problem as well like happening and that way instantly like all those humans like that have been turned into like souls like all of them turned back into like humans is like the scenario that I'm presenting. So like in that top floor of the center cover in front of like Quinla like I'm presenting like all of those humans like souls turning back into like humans is like the scenario that I'm presenting and those humans I'm delivering them directly like Alpha's father from Roland as well as Selga that will be like showing up, turning back from souls into humans at that point, like the scenario that I'm observing. And that I'm observing would be like the biggest shock to like Kirito at that point. It's like the scenario, it's individual at that point, it's like the scenario that I'm observing. So right then itself, like I'm observing like definitely like I'm observing yet like I'm observing there will be a single PAT, single memory piece that would be like uh, on top of like the PAT module of Quinlan, I'm observing like one other memory piece as well getting injected by like soul golem, which would be Alice's memory piece if you like the scenario that I'm observing. So like that memory piece would be falling right next to Alice. So like I'm observing Alice at that point we'll be picking up that memory piece and like putting it into and pocket. So like I'm looking right that in itself like while all of them will be turning back to like in, like I'm looking right in itself like and I'm definitely putting and won't be inserting that memory piece because of like Alice totally uh, making that Alice totally having that goal to like literally meet and talk to like Alice's sister as well as like Alice's father in like a role to like before like Alice like insert her like a memory creative mode memory is like the scenario to like completely because of speed example the thing and when all of them will be turning back on to humans and that way like the sword bottom would be like brushing brought down like I'm at that point and example for like Cardinal will be totally seeing this Cardinal as well as like Eugeo as well as and then you will be seeing this as the ultimate opportunity of like a chance to like bring down to level like I'm bring them all collectively launching collectively like together, like sending out like the ultimate like Cardinal sending out her ultimate attacks. After that, we'll as well as like Alice as well as Hugo as well as Crypto, like like unleashing their ultimate art, sacred weapon control, perfect weapon control of like ultimate main second phase like or second stage ultimate power. And them all launching it directly together towards like Quinela, and I was trying that will be like too much for like Quinela to handle, and I was trying that totally bringing down and defeating and maybe even taking the life of Quinela is also like a somewhat possibility that I'm suffering. So their collective attacks being strong enough to like bring down and take the life of Quinela as well. A possible scenario that I'm watching right now. And I was wondering, like, at that point, like, I'm was wondering, like, after that repeating of that twin, I'm like, into and slowly having Alice's like memory piece with Alice, like, I'm even still, like, I'm like, Alice won't be, like, straight away using it, and turning back to, like, the original Alice. But, like, I'm wondering, Alice, for that, deciding to, like, basically, talk to, like, Selka and her father in that role. So, like, I'm wondering, they would all be right there on the top of, like, the center cover on that very one. So like I'm doing as like Alice would be like joyfully like the night Alice would be like joyfully talking to like Selha, her Selka and her father. Like I'm doing maybe being at that point where Kirto and Eugeo and Alice all of them will be having their guard down and won't be like expecting uh, anything dangerous to happen at that point with the defeat of Quinella. At that point is when I'm looking like the flying minion quickly showing up and like quickly abducting from showing up from like the blind side of Ads and quickly abducting Ads away is like the scenario that I'm for. So like I'm sorry like while the like interaction between like Alice and like Selka and father will be happening like I'm thinking they might be like interacting in an area that would be like near to like the walls of like that home of the top of the center. So like I'm saying actually that from the start of it like we might be like saying that like I'm saying like it's only destroying like the walls and like quickly like affecting and flying away with like Alice like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point I was thinking that memory piece of Alice like I'm thinking like maybe even Alice losing that, like while like the minion would be attacking and quickly taking Alice away, like and so like maybe at that point Alice might be like holding that memory piece and like Alice and so like I'm looking like that totally Alice losing that and then totally getting affected and like the minion from which are flying away to reflect the affected Alice to the latter phase like the scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point, if I'm looking like Joe totally being so extremely shocked and I'm looking like he's quickly picking up like that memory piece of Alice and like Buffalo as well at that point will be showing up and I will them all like like Buffalo back and like them all like flying to the darker way. Just like to say that it's like feeling scenarios that I'm delivering on a friend. It is like me know the impression for like the exact scenario that I'm referring where like I was really getting affected away by like the flying minion. I'm referring maybe most likely maybe will be a scenario where like Alice will be like tonight Alice will be like talking to like Selka and her father and then like while they will be like talking and everything while Alice will be like talking having that satisfied being the night Alice would be having that satisfied feeling and would be feeling as if like basically now like Alice can basically use like the memory piece and insert the memory piece and like turn back to like the object Alice like as Dan would be about to do that and would be about to taking out like the memory piece and about to place it onto like a forehead like I'm looking like it would be at that very last second that I'm looking like the winner from like the last will be quickly showing up like, from like the line side of Alice and that will be affecting and taking Alice away. So like at that point that memory is like getting Alice losing it from her grip of her hand and everything. That memory is falling there on that top floor of the together while Alice would be getting taken away and getting affected by like the minion flying minion from the after base like any of the popular scenario that I'm looking at. Okay, so like the preemption right now as for that with that Cardinal health like Eugeo right now, taking in trying to take in like the memories which might be belong to Alice. Like I'm delivering like definitely the scenario that I'm looking for right now, especially for like Eugeo to turn into like since like Eugeo has revealed that basically how that Quinella is not affected by metal objects. I'm delivering like Eugeo totally like it's like Eugeo wanting to like turn into like the sword ultimate weapon. Like I'm thinking like Eugeo right now turning into like a magical kind of sword instead of like a metallic sword like I'm looking like the Cardinal's health like right now Eugeo turning into like an ultimately powerful like magical kind of sword and I was bringing like then Kirito wielding that Eugeo sword like Eugeo would be turning into like that magical sword like Kirito would be wielding that and Kirito and was bringing would be rushing in and charging in towards like Quinla and I was like with that sword strike of like that ultimate magical sword Eugeo like I'm like Kirito would be how like I'm like Kirito would be like taking out and or defeating and taking the life of Quinla and Quinla would be thrown down for such a manner the power of mathematics is so reflected in the scenario that I was able to play and my vocabulary. since and my brain shows that like things like Alice, like the actual Alice is like exceptionally good at like take that tell and everything like I'm looking like so because this reason that like you do is like pulling out like the memory piece of like the actual true Alice definitely when you so that like you could turn into not a metallic sword but like to turn into like a magical sword with like magical aura and everything which will be what like we are right now only believing as well as Cardinal would be believing that like would be able to like bring down Quinela right now. It's definitely not the end. That's it, definitely not the ambition right now with that even with like Cardinal that and basically with like Quinela taking the life of Eugeo as well. Like I'm looking for things that even though I'm looking for Cardinal won't be making a return like I'm definitely Eugeo definitely would be making a return and like Eugeo would be still surviving, you know. That's like I'm looking Eugeo would be still surviving and I'm looking like since like currently like crypto and Quinlan only things that the individual has totally died. Like I'm wondering it should be actually the case as well. And with like Quinlan right now, totally feeling like extremely overconfident and like victorious and like with like Quinlan slowly walking towards like Kirito, abandoning Kirito, feeling Kirito. Like, right now, I'm wondering definitely the scenario to be like Kirito with definitely having one more of that sort of like Cardinal. And like Kirito Cardinal might have given a fair extra to like Kirito, which like Kirito might have been hiding this entire time. The Blima like I'm just like as right now it's like Kirito totally man or confident and victorious man of like walking towards like Kirito and getting close to where Kirito is like I'm like doing the like we totally having her guard down right now with like Kirito being so extremely sad and disappointed, like I'm feeling like doing that confidence and feeling like we'll be getting the best of doing levels like doing that right now we'll be having a guard down and everything like Kirito has to level getting too close to Kirito and was like Kirito only using that short sword and I was like that I was like even though Cardinal has died like I was wondering that so of Cardinal would still be having like its effect on like doing that it's like the scenario that I'm looking so like if at that point using the short sword on like doing and damage being like a success and I was like that way like Quinla being stopped is like the scenario that I'm doing like either Quinla dying or like Quinla ending up into like an interesting kind of like a state due to that short thought was like the scenario that I was doing. So like that way Quinla being stopped by Kirito is like the scenario that I was doing. And right then itself I was different like Buck to like right then itself like I'm Buck would be like showing up to that top of like the center of there and I'm different they are like a Buck probably seeing like Eugeo lying there on the floor and I'm considering like Bakoli at that point would be like using his like true power to like perfect weapon control after like secret weapon control after like I'm using like Bakoli using his like actual true power of it. Using with this like the Bakoli would be able to like have even more of like a limit of like truth which like Bakoli would be able to like reverse back time. But like I'm looking like it will be only like Bakoli and Bakoli will be having to like by then like since like certain extent of time would have passed since like you just have like I'm like but Kohli would be having to like use up all of his like through strength of his like secret or perfect weapon control or power of like the time reversal which like but Kohli would be having. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. Using this is like but Kohli specifically focusing and targeting on locking his target on Eugeo alone and like reversing the like time of like Eugeo. And that way like bringing Eugeo back to like the point where like Eugeo was alive before like Eugeo death you just specifically like probably specifically focusing that reversal of time only on user alone that way like user totally being brought back to like robot police that perfect or like secure secret weapon control power is like in the scenario that I'm looking at that being like the biggest drop to like Kirito because like Kirito would have totally thought that basically user like permanently gone so like I'm looking like that way like through Bartoli like Bartoli saving me to like the scenario that I'm just offering and my working to and like in loving stuff at that point is like the scenario that I'm doing and on primary. Also the thing of reimbursement right now is like Quinela right now calling Kirito like boy from like the other side. Like I'm just definitely I'm still thinking about the mention that even though Quinela has used like the word flashlight, even though Quinela knows what a flashlight is, like I'm still emphasizing that Quinela won't be like actually in actuality won't be having like any sort of like an idea or like awareness about like the existence of like the actual real human world outside. That's definitely another mention. Like Linda would be still thinking along the lines of like the knowledge of like within of like the limits of within like the virtual world of the world is definitely another mention that I'm sitting on to correct. right now as like Quinela calls like it so as like the body from like the other side, like Quinela would be like totally uh, actually meaning about like thing that like it was from like the darker place to someone from like the darker place who has entered into like the human place. Might be along the lines of Quinla would be the only thing definitely member for ambition. So Quinla would be the only unaware of about like the existence of like the world outside like that would be a human world outside like the virtual world of the world is definitely my world for and so like the cinema was ambitions that like even while Quinla would be knowing like what the word flux like would be knowing what a flux light is like still like Quinla would still be an artificial flux light and Kito would be like the only human flux light in like the was in that case the virtual world of underworld and like the Quinla would be like also straight away saying that with the Kito as well because like the flux light exactly like Quinla and like all the remaining fluctuation like supposed to work on the setting of the pyramid. Like as for like the concept of like the existence of like a human flashlight, even up to like what it is, and the human flashlight, its connection to like that real human world outside the virtual world of underworld. About all the like doing that, we have like absolutely no idea or like even awareness of definitely member preemption. Okay, so like the legal transition right now, and for like Linda right now, as like Linda is about to take it of like Linda, I'm thinking of like why get to go up to the side without asking straight up to the data and just leave that like Linda deciding to that ask to that person about like a full account and everything. Like I'm bring that person will definitely be I'm sitting them as a credit as for like this person that Linda supposed to as that person would be definitely Linda's childhood rival, which would be like the current owner of like the Dark Tree, which would be like the queen of like the Dark, which would be a human, and which would be like the queen of the Dark Tree, and she would be like Alice's actual true mother. It's definitely never the impression as like that person, like under different like it would be solely. I'm still thinking about the impression that a deal between that person, like that queen of like, the Dark Tree, would be like the administrator level. Like I'm remembering that the queen of the Dark Tree would be having like administrator level powers in like the Dark Tree as well. That's the minimum impression. So like I'm remembering like this would be the reason for like Quinela being confused right now as for like why she didn't grant Kirito administrator level that like the queen of the Dark Queen or like the ruler of the Dark Tree not granting Kirito administrator level privileges while Kirito had basically shown up to like the central government to basically attack and bring down Quinela, someone who's like having all those administrative power and privileges, like my very impression. So like I'm definitely Quinela right now would be like talking not about like Kiko or anyone like by the other side Quinela would be totally referring to like the other three. And about that person like that Quinela talks about would be like the queen, like the ruler of like the other three would be like the mother of and definitely the actual mother of and definitely my very impression. And I'm still thinking my impression that like it might be solely based on that secret deal that Linda might have made with that person connected after play would be that most likely the queen, like the ruler of sector after play. According to which like basically currently like the barriers of like around like the center that has been removed and so that like Indians could like fly all the way up to like the top areas of like the center of the building. And it would be all way to like make that exchange as part of like the deal to like have like the flying minions from the data free that take away and to like the data free in exchange for like some sort of like a benefit for like Quinla. So also like a possibility that I'm also so like I'm wondering what Quinla would be right now thinking would be that in the name of this deal by like that other person that queen or like the ruler of the data free in the name of deal it might have been like betrayal by and a tricking attempt by that queen of ruler of Technography by sending Kirito to that basically bring down Quinela, stepping on the framework. So like so still like the fact that like that queen didn't grant Kirito administrator level privileges and powers would be what like Quinla would be totally confused about because of like Quinla having that administrative level powers and it would be like from Quinla point of view Quinla would be totally absolutely certain that like it would be impossible for like someone without like administrator level powers and related to even be able to like bring down and defeat Quinla. So like this would be what Quinla would be right now confused about, especially in the frame. Okay, so like definitely not very ambition right now with like and right now jumping into like protect Kirito from like the fatal attack of like Quinlan like definitely right now with like definitely right now with like Alice taking that hit and then like Alice ending up dying was like the scenario that I'm exactly like Quinela hasn't taken he just like like right now Quinela will do the taking and like as well. Just like the scenario that I'm looking at that will be such an extreme shock for like getting to and like if so would be like only going through like an extreme emotional kind of like the situation of like all that stuff and everything. And I was maybe at that point like and then I was then like I'm doing like maybe get all the screaming at that point and I was like at that point doing laughing or like a villanistic like laugh at like Kirito and like would become closer to it like Kirito to like uh with like the next thoughts right to like shake Kirito's like but like I'm doing it to be at that point that Kirito you remembering that he has like one extra step short so in his like rocket that shows sort of like Cardinal. So like I'm just using that as how I'm the like most likely hit show would be taking out and stopping and bringing down Quinela. It's like the scenario that I'm looking and that's basically my mention that like at that point felt like the moment Quinela would be brought down itself would be ending up coincidentally the moment in which like the body would be like making it. So like the top law of like center of it's like the scenario that I'm looking at. So like I'm looking that still I'm looking definitely as well as like Hugo getting saved because like I'm looking but body at that point using like absolute full power to like basically which is like the correct method control of kind of like a power like I'm looking at but body using it like full power and like reversing like keeping it like focus at the target on specifically Alice as well as Eugeo alone and like reversing the time of both of them and to like the point where like they were alive. That's like the scenario that I'm putting that way like I'm doing Alice as well as like through the time reversal power of like the body as well as like Yuzo being brought back to life and that giving another major shock to like Kiri and shock of relief to that kid just like the scenario that I'm looking for the final. Okay, so like the Canadian Instagram right now first off like the one main post that between like Kirito as well versus like Quinela those are definitely in this fight like I'm definitely putting like exactly like how like when Kirito has taken the life of like Churikin basically Kirito had that like free sword art online transformation in that final attack that Kirito had used to like take out Churikin basically Kirito has that how like costume transforming into that looking like that of that very same costume as that of like the Kirito's costume all the way I think like back in like the initial sword art online games like I'm looking like so like that attack as well that Kirito had used to bring down something another like might not be an attack that might exist in like the virtual world of Unworld but it might have it might take a technique or like a skill that might actually exist in like the game of like the virtual world of Underworld, but it might be some a skill that might only exist in like the game of like Sword Art Online. Like the very beginning game that kids have played is definitely one of the impressions. But like I'm going to be kids like memory, core memory within like kids mind that kids would be like during like extremely emotional and intense situation would be able to like access emergently access definitely not the like the same kind of like a situation happening with like the current Kirito versus Quinela fight, where like I'm looking like Kirito would be having even more of like an access to Kirito's skills from like the product and it's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like even though currently Kirito has only a Kindle sword, like I'm looking maybe I'm also looking also like the possibility that like even though Alice has like totally fallen unconscious, like I'm looking like maybe Kirito picking up Alice's sword as well. It's also like a remote possibility that I'm looking where like I'm looking like Kirito that way like using his like using like the sort of Kirito as well as like and like I'm looking Kirito maybe using like the dual wielding Kirito's like famous and like most like popular and like powerful like dual wielding sword style that like Kirito has like powerfully used skillfully used all the way back in like the very beginning in like Sword Art Online and also like Kirito maybe bringing out that technique by Kirito acting getting that brief back to that his memories of like Sword Art Online that happening and like Kirito using his like dual wielding sword style from Sword Art Online and skills from Sword Art Online and bringing Kirito maybe only like putting on that ultimate challenge for like Quinela and I'm looking Kirito initially only offering and defeating and taking the life of Quinela like one scenario that I'm looking or like the other possibility that I'm looking or like the other possibilities that I'm looking for like Kirito to like only using like Sword Art Online skills like I'm looking like Kirito dual wielding Sword Art Online skills like Kirito only offering and defeating Quinela. But like Kirito, like, and instead of taking Quinela, like I'm looking like Kirito would have that extra fair, like short sword using which is like Kirito would be like most likely putting Quinela into like a trap kind of like a situation. permanently trapped kind of like a situation. It's like the public scenarios that are basically kind of frame. Instead of little presentation right now, the regulations that Cardinals like Quinela's or like everything what may have actually happened to that Cardinal father, like Quinela's like boyfriend or like husband, like that Quinela is like giving from that and like Quinela also again like Quinela's like ultimate goal like might have been that absolute desire for like to see that absolute sort of freedom all over everyone. Especially over for a bit. So like I think that it might be before like Quinela became achieved her goal and came that the administrator that Amber might have had her boyfriend or her husband and might have even had her daughter Cardinal. And it might be before that like Cardinal might have been born at the level of prevalence. So I don't think that once that Quinella might have finally achieved her goal of like becoming like the ultimate role of the Indian country, becoming like the administrator. Once Quinella became like the administrator and felt like she has finally achieved her own goal and basically once like Quinella was like enjoying all that power of that being like at the very top of the hierarchy and being like a rule over everyone like at that point I was connected with them I don't know because that basically as such absolutely no need for like husband or like boyfriend like that but like at that point like the extreme now is the side of that when them I don't know but have like husband or her boyfriend that like absolutely useless and unneeded. And so like I was about to end up back after becoming the administrator what when I might have done might have been either when I might have turned when that's like husband or like boy Cardinal's father into that maybe one of like the senators who's like saying that someone or section ability or like what in might that's like one possibility number two or like the other possibility number two is that the moment in that became like the administrator like Abdullah might have straight away seen that her husband or like boyfriend was like Gunda might have straight away take up it's like might have been what might have happened. It's definitely it was one of these two possibilities that what might have happened to that Cardinal's father is definitely might have been